Well, yes, indeed, we're going to have to move on and focus on the key matter here today, and we're going to Abuja for that.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. I do have with me Mr. Ikechukwu, who is with us in the studio this morning. Just very quickly now, I'm trying to quickly get his designation. He is a columnist and former lecturer at the University of Lagos and also Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
Well, quite a lot's been going on in the petroleum sector, and we didn't know about it until eventually leaked to limelight, and it would seem that quite a bit has been speculated. Were you one of those who was speculating that this could eventually come up, given that the position of the GMD was split from that of Minister of State, and eventually Mr. Kachikwu got one, and Mr. Mekanti-Baru got the other? And the President retained the position of Minister of Petroleum. What were your thoughts?
Well, I was concerned. I didn't speculate on it. The fear was that with this kind of, if you like, not quite balkanization, but division of responsibilities, that there are bound to be gray areas which could lead to process irregularities. And I think that's what has emerged.
So this did not come as any surprise to you?
Not entirely. Not entirely. There were windows that could be exploited because the responsibilities were shared. It looked too big for anyone to have a complete overview. And so that's what could lead to this sort of development.
When you say not entirely, what parts of it came to you as a surprise then?
Well, that it built up for so long before somebody spoke up, and that also they couldn't meet among themselves to try to resolve issues. That, look, this is going on because I think there should be institutional concern besides personal schedules in an organization. And so if, for instance, two of us share responsibility for channels, and I'm handling areas that you cannot supervise, it would be reasonable for the both of us to occasionally meet, being that we have the concern of the welfare of the institution at heart. I am surprised that didn't happen until it became a showdown like this.
It's interesting that you say that there are areas that, he did not have supervisory powers over. Is that what you see? That's
what I suspect, because why would all those things be going on up to this extent? And in any case, the conversation should have occurred much earlier between them. And I also think that my assumption is that with the letter, it would mean that probably quiet consultations didn't work. Probably also conversations with the president didn't work. Otherwise, I don't think a letter like the type that has thrown up all of this should have been the first leg in this game. No. It's either consultations were blocked or didn't take place or were not thought of, or people were waiting patiently for somebody to commit enough sin so they get him into trouble. All of these are possibilities, but then they're all hypothetical.
Now, looking at that letter, though, I mean, there are different areas to the letter. I mean, all the matters were tabled under subheadings, and then eventually we did see what the prayers were. At the end of the day, how much of a scandal would you say this is for you, looking at, the thrust of the Buhari administration to try and straighten things out, especially in the oil sector?
Well, it is a massive scandal, but again, I'm a little careful about assigning summary verdict on regime reputation. Every regime has agents. The level of cohesion within that regime determines how effectively the agents can deliver on a particular goal. There is, first of all, the challenge of everybody buying in on that one goal. And if you recall, I think my appearance before the last here on Channels, I had raised the matter of whether everybody in the president's team is as anti-corruption disposed as himself. And the perception and my position on the matter is that around him there are concerns. The old practices are too alive to die suddenly, and identifying oneself with the president does not automatically translate. That's officially talking anti-corruption does not immediately translate into actually being disposed against it the way the regime came on initially. And I think what we are seeing is part of the crisis that began even before the elections. The APC is made up of several strands of political persuasions. There was no merger, if you like, in intentions and aspirations before and immediately after the elections, and it also has not occurred. You had the aggrieved people from PDP who felt the political space was no longer available because Jonathan was contesting, and so they moved. Those who were also very badly treated by the party moved. Rochas and his Abga people. So he had nearly 6 strands. And if you're talking about political aspiration, the aspirations were not uniform. There was APC headed by Buhari talking seriously about corruption. There were also from other sides people who even had cases to worry about who joined. Now the government came on and it became apparent. That's why you had a rogue Senate presidency. A Senate presidency that did not emerge from the party in power, and which lost actually to the party. So all of that together, you now see that even 2 years on, that cohesion is yet to be built. And so there are too many things that get into the public domain that shouldn't in a government. There are just too many.
So I recall when you said that last time that the president seemed to be alone in his fight against corruption and that many members of his cabinet might not be with him on that fight. And I recall asking you how you knew that. And you talked about how there were whisperings and there were conversations that had been happening outside of the place. Was this part of the conversation that you had heard before that time?
Well, also not just conversations, which might then be degraded, if you want to use the army of the military, to gossip and rumors. No. These are many of the people who spoke. Sometimes these are public seminars, conferences, quiet consultations. The concerns, for some it was a matter of when the crisis called NNPC would rupture, actually. They had more funds than they made available, but apparently it was like this thing is not structured to deliver in the end without creating scandals. You know, the president as minister, he clearly put people he trusted. One thing we must know for a fact is that all that is emerging now is not on account of his instruction. He didn't say, go and do this. I don't know if you get my point. You appoint me MD of channels, and I begin to do things that I could do and think I'll get away with, and it's found out. Even though you appointed me, you didn't instruct me to do that, but the structure was defective.
But when we hear that, you know, the person complaining, I mean, the person who is complained about got approvals from the president, what are we to say to that?
What we're to say is that approvals probably were given on straight-line communications without looking at the overarching responsibilities of NNPC. I make requisitions and you approve. I send prayers and you approve. If these prayers are sent without consent for the overall life of the organization, then that means there is limited monitoring and evaluation.
MD, beg your pardon, with the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources on Friday. It was a very quiet meeting, 1 hour, 20 minutes thereabouts. He was out, and then shortly after we heard that the NNPC GMD was sighted within the Aso Villa. How would you say the president should proceed on this particular matter, untangling this web?
Well, he must know that he bears up ultimate responsibility, not just as president, but because he's actually the minister of petroleum. These are his assistants, if you like. Get the facts first, objectively. Get all the facts from both parties, find out where and how things went wrong, and then also determine the extent of his own culpability. Were there supervisory aspects of the thing that were downplayed? Get the facts. He's spoken to them individually. He should also meet with them together, because there must be submissions from both parties that contradict each other. They should be given opportunities to clear all of that. And he will need some support, not just himself. There's the matter of workload, there's the matter of attention span, there's the matter of specialization. So having obtained the facts, then he will know what to do next. But the cry of crucify, it hasn't come to it. They've not got the cross yet. They've only got the victims, or they think they have. The facts alone. And my gut feeling is that at the end of the day, what you'll find is that this will be a plus. This is an evolving nation. This is a nation that has for the first time ceded power to a party that's not in power. This is a nation that at this point is made up of a government that speaks of change, but within which not everybody is talking about change. When things like this unravel, I don't think it is opportunity to celebrate and say, oh, Buhari is... No, it's an opportunity to celebrate the fact that we're evolving. Yes.
Is this more for you a case of corruption, or is this a case of lack of due process?
Both. Because lack of due process is a corruption or distortion of the of any procedure. When you say due process and you violate it, it's corruption.
Some people say they differentiate between a lack of, a strict governance process, corporate governance, as the case might be, and, that somebody embezzled money or somebody misappropriated money. They think that this is not the accusation here, but the fact that, due process has not been followed and corporate governance procedures have not been followed.
No, for me, I don't accept that distinction, actually, because failure to follow governance process is a corruption of what ought to happen. You are moving away from the mainstream. Now, an aspect of corruption is embezzlement, misappropriation, misapplication, or even over budgeting and under budgeting. So my take is that, yes, it is both. But the point is, let's not start saying should. Get to the bottom of it, get all the facts, find out the culpability of each party, and then use it as an opportunity to tighten the processes, improve the governance template. And that's why I say in the end it's progress, because individuals will come and go. Things like this occur in all corporations, everywhere, throughout history, and that's what leads to better and improved governance procedures and templates. It's an opportunity for us. A bad thing, yes, you deal with what needs to be dealt with, but if it showed you lapses, or failure of M&E that you should deal with. Yeah, that's my take. I don't quite sense the, what do you call it, the Armageddon connected with it. No, this is something that happens in the life of a corporation, and you deal with it as an incident.
You've heard about an Armageddon?
Well, some think this is political Armageddon for the government. It isn't.
How?
It's just another incident in the process.
What is your argument in the area of this being a political Armageddon?
Oh, that we say the government has always been this, and this is a proof of it. Come on. It's a government. It was bound to make mistakes and correct them.
I was just about to ask you, how government is going to deal with perception. There have been grievous accusations against the president, maybe not so grievous, depends on where you're looking at it from. But nepotism is one big accusation that people tend to hang around the neck of the president, and sometimes that is their perception. There have been accusations of how appointments are not even, or he's favored his region more, and things like that. And for some, they think that this is what has come to play in this particular scenario. Do you see it in that way?
Well, I know of accusations of nepotism. I know also that the facts, if you look at the names, personnel, and regions, appear to bear that out. Whether that is what you can bring to NNPC, I do not know. Kachikwu is not his cousin. It's not related to him. But I think the point is that one of the parties involved appears to be from the area. If we take the argument like that, it won't be fair, because it does not follow that because somebody is related to him, he is necessarily incompetent or necessarily disposed to ignore the rules. So I separate the two issues. The charges of nepotism, of neglect of some sections of the country are valid, insofar as the facts can be referred to through appointments and the configuration of personnel around him and very close to him. Yeah, that perception has some substance.
Now, how would you say then he deals with this matter, considering all of this perception? Because, for some people, perception is reality. So how would you say that he deals with this matter, even after he's found out all the facts?
It's an opportunity for him to redeem both the image and perception of his government as nepotic. It's as simple as that. The matter of the grass cutting controversy has not been resolved. And who again? There were two of them. You had the SGF and one other. So these are things he can now put into a cocktail and deal with them summarily, and then use it probably to relaunch. But as it stands, the growing perception is that not enough is being done quickly enough in matters relating to those who appear to be walking around him or close to him who face situations like this.
I was just about to say, how soon? And when you just said not enough appears to be done quickly enough, how soon should we be expecting this matter to be resolved?
Well, the one of the controversy arising from the IDP grass cutting, it's dragged on even after the Vice President presided over a panel and sent in a report. 6 months now. That's not good enough. This one, I think that this is a matter he should strive to resolve in less than a month, taking the backlog of related matters together, and that will give a new face to their engagement with the Nigerian people. It's as simple as that. But I move away from the celebratory disposition that, oh, this is it, they are going to collapse. Look, if anything goes wrong, we're all going to be affected. The recession, we're all suffering it. So when you celebrate the fact that the government appears not to be doing well, I ask you, what is it you really want? Yeah, so this is an opportunity for national growth and institution building. Oh, there are governance lapses we've discovered in NNPC. That's why Kachikwu and Baru could do this. Let's block those lapses. If they are culpable criminally, we take it further, but that is what happens in the life of a nation as it grows. That's the usual pattern, particularly in the West. And it may be advisable if it's found out that their continued stay in office will impede investigations. But my gut feeling is that all the facts related to this matter from both sides have already been put forward. And so if you're going to suspend them, you also have to make sure those who are acting for them have the proper template, because what usually happens some of the time in government is that when there's a suspension, the person standing in uses that window to go on rampage. It's unsupervised, and usually when the substantive person comes, there's no conversation about that tenure or half tenure. So yeah, if you're going to suspend them, which may be advisable to gain mileage in terms of perception, be sure also that you're not just removing them from office without doing anything that will not recreate what made you suspend them. But suspension as an act in itself, it does not solve any problem, but it may be advisable.
Are you happy that the Senate is going to be looking into this matter as well?
Well, I don't really see why I should be happy that the Senate is doing its job. That's why it exists. They are representatives of Nigerians, and this is a matter that concerns all of us. And as for that, I also think the National Assembly generally should learn to do more work. 2 weeks recess after, 2 months. You see, with the pay, sorry I'm deviating on this one, with the pay of members of the National Assembly and the kind of recess they take and the things, I just hope events don't come to summarily sober them up as things worsen for the people. Yeah, it's good they're taking income. That's what they should do. Go through with it, not in order to run down the executive, not in order to diminish Kachikwu and the other man, but in order to advise Nigeria on the best governance template for the NNPC going forward in the 21st century. There are similar organizations out of Nigeria. How are they run? And then the Senate also should be quick about it.
Because some people will say that isn't this preempting whatever investigation the executive arm of government might be carrying out on the same matter?
Well, that's one arm of government called the executive, which is the one that's culpable in the circumstance because these are the agents of the executive. So quite frankly, you will describe what the executive is doing as an administrative investigation. The National Assembly is a substantive arm of government that has not just the right and duty, but the mandate, compulsorily so, to look into issues that affect Nigerians as individuals and Nigeria as a nation. So to get on this matter is in order, totally in order. Where it will be wrong, where it will not play out well for us is where, again, the executive and the legislature do not exercise the necessary liaison. You know, once there's conversation going on between the two, it becomes this thing, and that's what hasn't been happening. The president has I think a presidential liaison representative, the National Assembly. Mm-hmm. Those fellows should get their job done.
Some people will be saying that precisely where was the National Assembly? I mean, they have duties to oversight this. They should have been able to spot this kinds of irregularities, assuming they are, while it was happening, assuming they were carrying out their oversight functions as they ought to have. Oversight
functions, they are not as detailed as that. And I don't want to go into the aspect of it that's actually not oversight, which is to come and have a handshake and go. But the element to look at here is that where is Servicom? You see, we keep creating institutions without knowing what they're supposed to do. If Servicom was a functioning institution of state, all the government needed when Buhari came in will have come from Servicom office. Servicom has the duty to ensure Nigerians are being well served, that the money is being spent for the purpose, etc., etc. Go to all the Servicom websites in most ministries. So where is Servicom in all of this?
Servicom, I'm not seeing a role for Servicom here, because the accusations here are that, you approved contracts above, your personal limits and things like that.
Yes.
What is the role for Servicom in that?
Okay, Servicom is service compact with Nigerians, through which for an agency like that, there's a Servicom office, which will then look through, should also have detected that as well. What I'm saying is I have a plethora of, you have a transparency monitoring unit, you have Servicom, you have several others, you have procurement unit. All of them are agents of state that nobody is holding responsible for failures like this. Why do they exist? The first transparency monitoring unit was set up by my boss, the Minister of Transport, when I was, let's say, to Ojo Madrekwe. That was even before the one from ICPC. Ojo was the first to set it up, and then later met with ICPC chairman. The point I'm making being, even at the time he was setting it up, for me to review the terms of reference, I disagreed with him. I said, look, these are functions. Everything in the terms of reference already exists in procurement, in GPRS, and all of that. It is to strengthen the existing organizations, not increase their number. Today we have EFCC, ICPC, CID has not been disbanded, and several other agencies. What's the impact of that? So as you multiply institutions, some of them with overlapping functions, of course there will be activity, but the cohesion of the state will keep declining. And so you have that kind of situation. That's really part of it, that you have too many agencies moving the nation forward, if I must use the expression, each one with his own map, some heading straight into the forest, creating a new road, but there's an expressway they could all just agree on the traffic rules and move more smoothly. That's part of what has emerged here.
Interesting. Well, are you optimistic then about the status of the NNPC? I mean, some people have said unbundle the NNPC. Some people say disband the NNPC. I mean, I'm sure you've heard that from current governor of Kaduna State. He has very strong views on the status of the NNPC. Do you think that the NNPC is beyond repair?
Well, talking about the governor of Kaduna State, he's also always had a reputation for unbundling and disbanding. Remember, he was head of BPE and did a lot of selling. And today we sold off the estate for the members of the National Assembly, if you remember, under the monetization. And each, after every 4 years, we spend close to 6 billion on the instance, dealing with what will not have happened. Because all that needed to happen is when you have new legislators, they probably budget 2 million, 3 for rehabilitation of each of the buildings and furniture, and they move. But instead of that, you spend between 6, 12 billion.
Some people say that wasn't his decision alone.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm only saying, now I'm being deliberately mischievous. I'm saying it's presided over a lot of unbundling and selling and disbanding. So that's enough for one thing. But NNPC, let's also see how it's run in other countries. I mean, not NNPC, similar organizations. He has a point that it will always create problems at the level of corruption, institutional capacity, and fulfilling the role it's supposed to, because it's under government, whether it's supposed to be some kind of a business related with other businesses. So it may be good to think of making it the sort of thing you have in other places that are functioning well. Because as long as it is a government platform, you and I can send our cousins for jobs. We can talk about oil liftings, we can talk about allocations. It provides whoever is there with a lot of power of patronage, and is under supervised, because those who are supervising him also draw some benefits. So it's a point. But whether the overall configuration of political economy of the country conduces to that is another matter. So in principle, yeah, Nasir has a point.
But I mean, when you look at what's happening, I mean, because in recent times we've heard, some agencies of government are emitting money. Even, I think at some point we also heard that the NNPC's books were beginning to look better than they had looked, way better than they had ever looked. So does this dampen your optimism in terms of the direction that the NNPC should or could be headed?
No, the point is, when you say the books are improving, the question is from what point? If I score 3% in an exam, that's 3 over 100. And then I now score 21. It's an improvement, but I failed as well. It's just as simple as that. There's nothing you can do about it. You know, NNPC simply has had too long a tradition of impunity, if you like the word. I mean, look at the facts, or alleged facts. Imagine after this government came in.
You know what, Mr. Ikechukwu, I'm going to have to ask you to, answer that question or finish your thoughts. You're going to complete your thoughts for us when we return from this time out. Please stay with us.
Upon exposing corruption as part of their responsibilities to Nigerians. This is the focus of two major motions the lawmakers consider in plenary. The first comes as a point of order. It's on the allegations raised by Senator Issa Misau against the Inspector General of Police, which has been in the media for 2 months now.
If you invite the IG here, he will not be able to justify why one person who is just dealing in oil will have 30 policemen, therefore depleting the ratio that we are even already in shortage of. There is no way you will be promoting people close to you, whereby so many people are there in the rank for 10 years. Somebody will come and stay in the rank for just 3 months because he's close to you, then you will promote him.
He calls for an investigation into the matter.
They are undermining the police and thereby increasing the crime. Most of the things that were happening today is because of lack of indiscipline, because of lack of leadership of the police. You see kidnappings everywhere.
I think for most of us, the most important issue is how we reform our institutions and how we fight corruption. The basis of all this started on the issue of whether there were bribery in the issue of promotion exercises and revenue of police. And these matters, I think, are weighty enough and they must be investigated.
An ad hoc committee has been set up to investigate the allegations against the police, while the Senate Committee on Ethics is to investigate issues regarding the senator's disengagement from the police. The committee has 2 weeks to turn in its report. Meanwhile, a motion on allegations of corruption against the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Trading Limited is up for consideration. The sponsor is alleging that a policy of the group managing director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation is affecting the country negatively.
Aware that since NNPC owns NNPC Trading Limited and the refineries, they also shortlist companies that get allocation of products, lifting of crude oil, and importation of products, thus giving undue advantage to the in-house company, even where it lacks the capacity and requisite requirements to do what it's doing today.
He calls for an investigation into the matter. An additional prayer is, however, proposed.
To include investigate the allegations made against the GMD of NNPC by the Honorable Minister of State of Petroleum Resources as contained in his leaked letter to Mr. President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The motion is adopted and an ad hoc committee is set up to investigate the matter. The Senate President says the committees must carry out their duties diligently as the Senate is determined to stamp out corruption. Lanre Lasese, Channels Television News.
Mr. Ikechukwu is still with us in the studio. He's a columnist and a former lecturer with the University of Lagos. Now, just quickly, before we went on break, you were answering the question of your optimism, or lack of, on the status of the NNPC. I think you're making the point about if you were scoring 3% and moving to 21% is still a failure.
It's still an absolute failure. And the NNPC has prospects, but it needs to live a life different from what it is. My take on that, my summary take is that we have other organizations playing this kind of role in other countries, and they're not under government. Let's study a more viable template, a template that inclines less towards patronage, that provides, because once somebody is in a place that offers him a power of discretion over state resources, the temptation to abuse it is very strong. And when in addition you don't have a strong governance rules and you don't have a lot of discipline at the level of leadership, it becomes a bazaar, which is what we've seen over and over. And it's not about this regime, it's not about these times. Look at NNPC, just be nice about it. Just do 20 years going back from now. Not much has changed. In fact, it's been worse in the past also. So my take is that let's examine the suggestion of the governor of Kaduna State for its merits, breaking out the details, so that once you take away that platform for patronage, people will get busy elsewhere. So that it doesn't continue to drill down the damage done to Nigeria by oil. It made us to abandon all the other means of earning income, agriculture, alternative minerals in the soil, all of them. If any single one of them could sustain the country, we've left all of that and created a culture of distribution and consumption, not production. So let's also get NNPC out of the way so that We also do not strengthen the corruption of the practice of a town hall meeting for distribution only. Yeah, that's my take. NNPC can be useful, but not the way it is structured at the moment.
It is interesting you talk about a town hall for distribution. We have to thank you most kindly for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. We've been speaking with Mr. Ikechukwu, who is a columnist, former lecturer with the University of Lagos, and Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. Sunrise Daily will continue in just a moment.